Humans seem to always be fascinated and terrified of the idea of a rogue AI, of a computer rising above its programming and basically going against humans. We got Terminator, we got unlimited pieces of media talking about it. But this book taught me that something can be even more terrifying than that. And that's basic social interactions. So, hi everyone. All Systems Read by Martha Wells. I read this about a week and a half ago now. I just needed to reset my brain. And I wanted a fun, quick read, and that is exactly what I got with this. And basically, the first thing I can say about this book is, in terms of universal appeal, I think this is pretty much up there. Like, I think almost anyone could at least like it. And I don't know if there's, this book basically is instantly good. Like, you just, page one. Literally, like, I don't know if there's a book more than this one that I think you could basically read page one and know if you will like this. And it's just instantly good. And it has a protagonist that's super relatable. Obviously, most of you know who Murderbot is. Murderbot is, for those who don't, is an unchained AI who really doesn't feel like taking over the human race and would rather watch cheesy TV shows and be sarcastic. And basically Murderbot works as like a security unit, but is actually, you know, has free will and has broke its regulator. And this is about Murderbot's misadventure. Murderbot basically trying to care. Anyway, I think this was really fun. Like, I read it in day. I absolutely enjoyed reading it. It had some clear flaws, in my opinion, that stopped it from being, like, among my favorite novellas. And it's kind of, about half this book, it's kind of weird because the parts I like are normally the parts you don't like in a book, and the parts I like, I mean, I like the entire thing, but the parts I had problems with are normally, like, the good part in a book. So normally you have the setup in a book that's kind of like you have to get through, but where it's just it's just Murderbot being Murderbot. But that was the best part of this. Like, Murderbot being Murderbot is great. I don't know if I've ever read a book that relies on you liking the protagonist more than Murderbot. Like, if you don't like Murderbot, this book is basically impossible to enjoy. But if you like Murderbot, you basically can't dislike it. And basically for the first half, you're following Murderbot just being themselves. And Murderbot, I don't know how Martha Wells managed to do this, but they managed to be one of the most relatable characters I've ever read. I'm surprised for, like, the fantasy character tag, which I hadn't read this when I did this tag. More people didn't pick Murderbot as their fantasy twin. I might have, like, Murderbot's real relatable. Especially if you're introverted and if you're someone who, like, doesn't really like dealing with people that much, generally gets sick of other people, I think you'll really relate to Murderbot, which is strange because, you know, it's kind of like relating to Terminator. Even has a similar name. I guess the one sentence premise is, what if Skynet just really wanted to watch cheesy TV shows? That's really all Skynet wanted to do. The flaws, I think, start coming to this book on the second half when actual plot happens. And it's one of those plots where, like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, you start asking questions like, why couldn't they just do that? What's stopping this? And it's like, I have to get myself to be like, no, don't worry about it. It's not that type of book. Just have fun. And there's a cast of side characters. I think the side characters were pretty one-dimensional. Like, you don't read this for the side characters. The humans in this book are not what you're reading it for. And they were just kind of there. And, like, it felt like they were just, they're people, and there's, like, a page of notes of what their personality is. And will they develop? Allegedly. Probably not. So, like, really, it was weird. The second half, when the plot happens, is the half that I didn't like as much. I still liked it. Like, it was good, but I, like, this one, the r/fantasy best sci-fantasy novella of all time. Like, it's fun, but I don't know about that. It definitely, like, it does have some themes to say. Obviously, it has themes of, like, whether AI are actually people. And it has some stuff on, like, corporations. But thematically, it's not something you haven't seen in books or movies 100 times. Like, you're not... I'm sure Martha Wells put a thought into her theme, but, you know, I'm not reading Murderbot for the theme. I'm reading it for the protagonist. I'm basically exclusively reading it for the protagonist. Virtually nothing else about the world really hooked me. The writing is fine. Like, it's very practical. It's very utilitarian. It doesn't get in the way at all. You're also not going to read a part of the writing and be like, you know, Martha Wells, is she the best prose writer I've read? Is she up there with Hobbits? It's not what her writing is there for. But it definitely serves its purpose. And I think in terms of, I'm kind of interested to read some of her other stuff, because, like, this is pretty deep first person. Like, you're deep in this, not kind of person. Allegedly, that's the entire question. Is it a person? But you're deep in this character's head, and whenever you have a deep first person like this, I'm always curious whether this is the character's voice or the author's voice. So I'm kind of curious if anyone who watches this video has read the other stuff of Martha Wells. Do the protagonists in their head, do they think like Murderbot? Because I know, like, for some first person stuff, if you only read their first person, you think that's just the author's voice. Dresden comes to mind. Then you read their third person stuff, and it's like, oh, they're actually just amazing at voice. So Martha Wells is potentially amazing at voice, because Murderbot's voice definitely feels incredibly distinctive, but that also might just be the author's voice. Overall, my score for this book was a 7.5 out of 10. I actually think the recommendation for this book is incredibly easy. Ask to borrow it, read page 1. If you think page 1 is funny or relatable, read it, you'll like it. If you read page 1 and you're like, why the hell should I care about that? Don't read it. You won't like it. I actually think, like, I've never read a book more that I think people could tell whether they'll like it by page 1. Because it's like, you really learn who Murderbot is quickly, and the entire enjoyment of this book is based on how much you like the protagonist. Like, it's the most protagonist-based, like, enjoyment of a book I've ever seen. And, I mean, I've read some books where liking the protagonist is pretty important. Like, if you don't like Harry Dresden, you're probably going to struggle with the Dresden Files. But this even more. So, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was a solid, fun book. It was exactly what I needed. My brain was tired of remembering 10 billion characters and 10 billion terms and super dense writing. And I just wanted something that I could let my brain relax and I could read in a day. And that's what this was. And it was fun. It didn't, like, hit me emotionally or change me as a person, but I don't think it's supposed to. It's what you read if you want to have a good time. And if you think the idea of a socially anxious robot or android is fun. And, like, the humor is really good in this. I have to actually give props to the humor. This, I did laugh out loud, I think, a couple times. Really good dry humor. I've read a few authors with really good dry humor, but this does stand out. So if you're a fan of dry humor, I think you'll find this funny, but I think it's pretty straight. I think this is pretty universal appeal. I think most people who watch this will like it, but not love it. But again, it's all based on how much you like the protagonist. That's what I think of Murderbot, All Systems Red. I am going to read the rest of the series, but pretty far down my TBR. I just read this because I needed a palate cleanser. This is a perfect palate cleanser. If you are in my position and you've, say, read 7 straight Malazan books, or a bunch of straight Wheel of Time books, or a bunch of Stormlight books, or Dune, and you're just like, I just want something small and funny, this is a really good go-to. Yeah, that's my recommendation for Murderbot by Martha Wells. A really fun read.